Here is the news coming to you from African Television Network News. I am Kafayat Ibrahim. Headlines: Congo ministers resigns as election debate heats up. Buhari condemns Burkina Faso coup d'etat. Facing arrests, Saraki cites politics in CCB prosecution. Breaking news: Anna Idowu Awolowo is dead. Surrender or face a terrible consequence, Air Chief warns Boko Haram. Sovereign Wealth Fund drops to $300 million, Oshomole. U.S. official: Burkina Faso junta should step aside. Taxing terrorism in Zimbabwe. Death toll in South Sudan fuel truck blast reaches 182. Turkish jets hit Kurdish militant camps in Iraq, at least 55 killed. Failure of U.S. policy in Syria prompted talks with Russia. Now the news in detail. Two ministers resigned from Democratic Republic of Congo's government on Friday, raising pressure on President Joseph Kabila to name a new cabinet ahead of elections next year that are causing rising political tension. Kabila has ruled a vast Central African nation for 14 years, but is barred from standing again. A spokesman says he will respect the constitution, but critics say he is using violence and manipulating laws to prolong his rule or engineer a third term. The movement is one of the 7 parties whose leaders were expelled from the presidential majority coalition this week for signing a letter demanding that Kabila relinquish power when his term expires. President Muhammadu Buhari and the federal government unreservedly on Friday condemned Wednesday's detention of the interim president, the prime minister and other ministers of the transitional government of Burkina Faso in coup d'etat. A statement by the special advisor to the president on media and publicity, Mr. Femi Adesina, said Buhari and Nigeria aligned with ECOWAS, the African Union and the United Nations in rejecting the brazen contravention of the Constitution and Transitional Charter of Burkina Faso by elements of the Presidential Guard under the leadership of General Gilbert Diendéré. The president urged the people of Burkina Faso to remain calm and steadfast in support of the transitional order, elections and democratic governance, with the full assurance that Nigeria, ECOWAS and the international community will uphold their right to peace, freedom, democracy and good governance. The Code of Conduct Tribunal CCT sitting in Abuja yesterday ordered the arrest of the Senate President Dr. Bukola Saraki following his refusal to appear in court to face a 13-count criminal charge that was preferred against him by the federal government. The tribunal, which is headed by Justice Danladi Umar, directed the Inspector General of Police (IGP) Mr. Solomon Arase and other relevant security agencies in the country to arrest the Senate President and produce him in court on Monday for arraignment. Saraki was in the charge before the CCT and dated September 11, 2015, alleged to have falsely declared his assets contrary to the constitutional requirement. He was accused of deliberately manipulating the assets declaration form that he filed prior to his assumption of office as the Senate President by making anticipatory declaration of assets, aside allegation that he owned and operated foreign bank accounts while being a public officer. Saraki is expected to explain before the CCT how he acquired some assets which the federal government believes were beyond his legitimate earnings. Chief Anna Idowu Dideola Awolowo is dead. Mama HID, as fondly called by many, died on Saturday at age 99. HID would have turned 100 on November 25 this year. She reportedly died shortly after a meeting on Saturday with a family member. Yoyo Odua, as she's properly known, was said to have been a part of the meeting for the planning of her 100th birthday. Chief of Air Staff Air Vice Marshal Sadiq Abubakar on Saturday warned the Boko Haram insurgents to surrender or face the full force of the nation's military capability. He made the warning while addressing newsmen at the end of 2015 annual 10-kilometer walk jog exercise organized by the admin branch of the Nigerian Air Force in Abuja. My message to the insurgents is simple. It is either they give up their insurgency or they are going to face the force. Edo State government and chairman of the National Economic Council had a community on the management of the excess crude accounts and related federation account issues. Adams Oshomole has said that the $1 billion Sovereign Wealth Fund has been depleted to $300 million. The managing director of Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority, Uche Oji, had last week claimed that the $1 billion initial sovereign fund contributed by the government was intact and had generated 15.7 billion naira last year. But Oshiomhole, who spoke with State House correspondents after meeting with Vice President Yemi Osibanjo at the State House on Thursday night, said the claim was false. He said he had evidence to debunk the claim that the fund was invested in projects that were already funded from other sources. Susan Rice, President Obama's national security advisor, said Friday that the United States and the international community were united in responding to the crisis in Burkina Faso. The junta should step aside and allow preparations for the October elections to resume immediately. The U.S. stands squarely with the people of Burkina Faso in rejecting this threat to their democratic progress, she said in a keynote address to the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation's Legislative Conference in Washington. Over the past few years, the political tensions and instability in Zimbabwe have put off international visitors from coming to the country's premier tourist hotspot, Victoria Falls. But that's starting to change, and as the tourists return, hotels are sprucing themselves up and the airport is due for a major expansion. But just as this is happening, the government has slapped a 15% tax on accommodation occupied by foreigners, a move which may say is halting business. The death toll in South Sudan from the explosion of a fuel truck this week has risen to 182. A regional official said on Friday the blast occurred on Wednesday as crowds gathered around the tanker to gather fuel after it had veered off the road. An official had earlier said the toll could keep rising as South Sudan did not have adequate facilities to treat the burns. At least 55 militants were killed when Turkish warplanes hit Kurdistan Workers' Party (PKK) camps in northern Iraq overnight, security sources said on Saturday, as Ankara shows no sign of easing up strikes on insurgents ahead of November 1st election. Security forces have responded by launching frequent bombing raids into mountainous northern Iraq, where the PKK has camps. It is the worst violence NATO member Turkey has seen in 2 decades, coinciding with fighting across the border in Syria, involving government troops and Islamic State militants. The failure of U.S. policy in Syria has prompted Washington to hold talks with Russia over the crisis in the Arab country, an American foreign policy analyst says. James George Jatras, the former U.S. diplomat and advisor to the Senate Republican leadership, made the remarks in an interview with Press TV on Friday while commenting on the reported renewal of military contacts between the U.S. and Russia. The Pentagon said on Friday that Washington and Moscow have resumed high-level military contacts to discuss mechanisms to avoid accidental encounters between their forces in Syria. That will be all for now. But before we go, let's take a recap of the headlines. Congo ministers resign as election debates heats up. Buhari condemns Burkina Faso coup d'etat. Facing arrest, Saraki cites politics in CCB prosecution. Breaking news, HID Awolowo is dead. Surrender or face a terrible consequence, Air Chief wants Boko Haram. Sovereign wealth fund drops to $300 million, Oshiomhole. U.S. official, Burkina Faso junta should step aside. Taxing tourism in Zimbabwe. Death toll in South Sudan fuel truck. Blast reaches 182. Turkish jets hit Kurdish militant camps in Iraq. At least 55 killed. Failure of U.S. policy in Syria prompted talks with Russia. Thanks for joining us and bye for now.